everybody. Happy Thursday to you. We are making it towards the end of the week, and I am happy. I have not been feeling my best. It just seems like as soon as the kids start school, they'll be healthy all summer, and then all of a sudden they start school, and here comes the germs. So, yeah, and I don't even know if it's a cold or my whole sinuses, everything. So if my eyes are watering, whoops, let me mute that. I have to police my chat, so I was waiting to go live. So, anyways, I am not gonna stay on long, guys. I was just kind of taking in some of the sort of aftermath of the unfortunate incident that happened with Charlie Kirk, the founder of Turning Point USA. Just kind of taking in all the different opinions and all the different reactions. And, first off, I want to say that I am not going to be bullied into having a sentiment about an individual. And again, I said it before, I didn't agree with Charlie Kirk's rhetoric. I think that, freedom of speech, it definitely has some limits to it in terms of the intent of the person and how they're exercising their freedom of speech. And I do believe that Charlie, and whatever his belief systems were, they definitely, his belief systems were offensive to people. And I'm not saying that he had a right to have them, but I think that overall, when you think of the conservative movement in general, unfortunately, it is rooted in not for the love of America. It is rooted in ideas of America when, during times where they had some level of supremacy in this nation, but obviously at times have changed, our constitution being more enforced to make it more equal and equitable to the people, who all of the people who were born on this land, not just the white faced ones, right? American society has changed, and it has evolved from the mindsets and ideologies of people who have supremacist mindsets. Now, here's the thing about, Charlie Kirk and even some of the white nationalists, and I've said this before, and it's just an observation of mine, right? When you peel back the layers of some of these so-called white supremacists or white nationalists, you kind of start to scratch your head and say, well, what's wrong with what they are thinking, right? And I know that that's kind of shocking for a lot of people to hear, right? But, you know, what is wrong with, white individuals saying that I only want to be with white people? What's wrong with white individuals saying that I want to create lineage and ancestry with white people? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. I know a lot of black people who do not interracially date. I don't really care for it myself. I've done it, but I've never taken it seriously. Because it's just, I believe in a preservation of my own race and culture, and people would think that that would be a black supremacist thing to think, or way to think about. But again, we're talking about a nation with people with different cultures, and every culture has their own cultural interests and preservation, right? So on that side of Charlie Kirk's arguments, I didn't really care about it. If that's his business as a white man to want to have some kind of idea of preservation of the white man, that's your business. Where Charlie Kirk really was, I think where he went south is he was placating into the white supremacist mindset of superiority, and his arguments about black people in a generalized way, um, it really didn't leave any room for people to believe that he was nothing but somebody who upheld white supremacist mindsets. And, I'm not saying this to bash the man while he's dead, because he's gone, right? But at the same time, I think we need to kind of peel back the layer. Charlie was a Christian man. And a lot of people are, obviously calling out his Christianity and his faith and, his values and stuff. And I'm pretty sure that Charlie is familiar with Ecclesiastes 7:1, right? Ecclesiastes 7:1 says, "A good name is better than fine perfume. The day of death is better than the day of birth," right? And how true is that, right? That is so true because the day we die is actually way more significant than the day that we were born because babies haven't pissed anybody off, right? They haven't spewed any type of rhetoric. They haven't cleaved on to a position that may be offensive to other people, right? They're not revolutionaries of any kind, right? So the day that we die is more significant than the day that we were born because it's the name that we die with, right? And so that gets me to Charlie Kirk, right? Because a lot of people are upset because there are people celebrating this man's death. They're very nonchalant. You have individuals on the conservative side, they are calling for empathy for Charlie and his family and their movement and the people in their movement. And I'm just gonna say this. Me personally, I would never celebrate the death of somebody else. I'm not gonna be bullied into celebrating, his death. I'm not gonna be bullied into believing that it is okay to celebrate Charlie Kirk's death. There's a lot of black people on the mic right now that are very indifferent. I see a lot of black people who are very indifferent. They don't really care one way or the other, right? But then you do have some black people who are kind of calling out some of Charlie Kirk's rhetoric towards the community. And they are not so indifferent. Matter of fact, for them, it's like it's one less white supremacist in the world, you know? And again, nobody wants that reality that when they die, there are large segments of people who are actually celebrating the reality of their death, right? And I'm not sure if people are celebrating the manner of Charlie Kirk's death or if they're celebrating just the fact that he's not here anymore. And I think that's another thing to consider too. I don't think that anybody deserves what happened to Charlie Kirk. Not a black man, not him. I don't think the black men who fought for their people and their mindsets of ideology, like Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, Martin Luther King, they didn't deserve what they got either. You know what I mean? But there are a lot of people who are not on their camps who were celebrating their deaths all the same. So, what does that tell us about America? What does that tell us about Americans? You said, who cares that you're black? So is my mom. I don't think that, my whole thing is, I wouldn't care if anybody cared if I was black or not. If you don't pay my bills, if you don't pay my taxes, I don't care about what you think about my complexion at all. I mean, and I think that there's a lot of people in society that want people to care about their complexion, whether they're white or black or whatever in between. I mean, it's a lot of people that, they cleave onto these race discussions because it makes them feel a part of something. A lot of these people are losers in their own individuality, and they need this kind of hyper group think just to feel like they're somewhat intelligible and accepted. But I think most Americans, we're not really into these race discussions. I find it to be propaganda. I really do believe that America has the only government structure, not the only one, but we're one of the major nations in which we have a special interest in keeping our own nation divided, the people divided ideologically. But, that's just to say, no matter what you decide, whatever ideology you decide to cleave on to, just keep in mind that the name that you build for yourself, right? That name is going to, follow you even in death. And, again, there are people who die all the time and they're not celebrated, but across different political spectrums, people die and people mourn these people indiscriminately. With Charlie Kirk, people are looking at, this was, the assassination of a racist, of a disease in America, and we should not feel too sad about that. On the flip side, I was able to catch Candace Owens. She kind of had her humble beginnings with Charlie Kirk, and to be honest with you, I don't watch Candace Owens at all, but I was very interested in kind of seeing where her reaction is going to be. And it's so sad. Y'all need to stop posting that Django picture with Samuel L. Jackson and Leonardo DiCaprio, right? All I have been seeing in my timeline is that Django picture with Leo DiCaprio and Samuel L. Jackson when old boy got killed or whatever, and Samuel Jackson just bawling over Leo DiCaprio. That's basically how some people interpret, any black person right now giving rest in peace to Charlie Kirk, sending condolences out to Charlie Kirk's family. This is what they're saying that they are. Is they're just basically Sambos, right? Because why would you send condolences to a racist? Why are you resting and piecing a racist? This is what a lot of people are on the mic saying right now when it comes to Charlie Kirk. And, here's the thing, I think that every black person is allowed to individually be objective however they see fit. There are people that can look at Charlie Kirk and say, no, I don't like what he's saying because it's coming from a white man, but what he's saying is actually true. There was a brother on my Facebook timeline who's pro blackity black, 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 black. But somehow he managed to find an agreeable clip of Charlie Kirk talking about the dynamics of the black family, right? And he's like, where's the lie, right? So there's a lot of black people who could listen to some of the things that Charlie Kirk said and actually resonate with his observations being real problems in the black community. The problem is they didn't want to receive it from him, right? They don't want to receive, a white guy telling black people what their problems are. And then not only that, a lot of things that Charlie Kirk was saying, unfortunately, he was placating off of just your usual suspect talking points about black America, your usual suspect conservative talking points. They all kind of have the same echo chamber when it comes to their conversations about black people. So, I think that, for what it's worth, I don't know if Charlie Kirk was a white supremacist or a white nationalist or not. He seemed to have aligned himself with a hell of a lot of black people, but at the same time, black conservatives cannot be trusted at all. I mean, they will align with an oppressor all day if it will give them some level of safety. So there's that. What's going on, Lucas? What's going on, Ghetto Planet? Just talking about the aftermath of this Charlie Kirk and all of the conversations that are happening as a result of it. You know, there's some people celebrating this man's death. Obviously, on the conservative side, they're mourning his death, and it just really made me think about that scripture at Ecclesiastes 7:1, where it talks about a good name is better than perfume, and the day of death is better than the day that we were born. And again, when you're a baby, you haven't pissed anybody off, right? And so, you know, Charlie Kirk is an example of this scripture, right? There are some people that thought that Charlie had a good name. There are some people that respected what Charlie did. There are some people who felt like they got what he was doing, right? And I think if you kind of peel back the layers here with Charlie Kirk, if we kind of take away any conversations that Charlie Kirk had maybe had about black people, a lot of people wouldn't have had an issue with Charlie Kirk, because what he was doing from the conservative perspective was he was just spreading the conservative message on the college campuses. He was having those conversations, those political conversations with college students that I think a lot of people weren't having. And again, before Turning Point USA, you really didn't see large political presence on the college campuses like you did when he started Turning Point USA. So, gotta, in terms of raising, political awareness to next generation youth, at least about his political position, you got to get to do it as flowers on that. You said you missed Charlie. I don't know Charlie, but I'm sorry that you miss him. Um, it's unfortunate, that happened. They said that they found the shooter too. They did find the shooter. They were able to name him. Hang on. Let me mute myself. This is Jeremy from the Quartering talking about it. The conservatives are real messed up right
we're
now.
Gonna get a name and perhaps an arrest or a body retrieval. Part of me believes the man that did this probably has been no longer with us for some amount of time, as is with almost everybody who's tried this, although Ralph stayed around. So we'll have to.
It's interesting, and I mean, I'm not trying to kick a man while he's obviously down, but I think some of the arguments coming from some of the conscious black community is notable. Charlie Kirk spent a considerable amount of his time, you know, talking, talking about black people, narrating black people. And that narration really had little bias because obviously he was trying to uphold idealisms of white superiority. Um, but with that being said, a lot of people are kind of noting that it wasn't black people that took him out the game. And when you want to talk about crime and the fear, the MK Ultra type of fear that they like to perpetuate in this country, and I've said this to black people too. Nobody is a bigger threat to the black man like the black man. Just like nobody is a bigger threat to the white man like the white man. You have a greater chance of getting killed by somebody in your own damn race than you do somebody from another race. And that's just what it is. The biggest threat to any given cultural group in America will always be the people within that cultural group first. And that's just what it is. So, you said he wasn't a white supremacist. I mean, like I said in my previous video, I don't know if the man was a white supremacist not, or I wouldn't know if he was an overt one, but I would say covertly, Charlie Kirk did uphold white supremacist talking points. He absolutely upheld white supremacist talking points, and for people to give him an intelligence card. To me, real intelligent people are able to speak on things objectively, not through a single lens. And to me, that is what he did. And I think that, this is what conservatives tend to do when they're narrating black people. They do not create exceptions. They don't want to create exceptions outside of the little ones that they have made. And even then, they don't even make exceptions out of them, right? Because they treat their little black conservatives like Sambos all the same. They treat their black conservatives like expendable assets all the same, just like the Democrats. That's just me, though, right? But I didn't get, overt white supremacists out of Charlie Kirk, but I did get a white guy who understood that there was a demographic for white supremacist talking points, and he could get coins being a white man talking on those things. So whether or not he was a white supremacist or not, I don't know. But I will say, if you examine his rhetoric, he was definitely hitting on white nationalist talking points, and maybe he was doing that for them coins, just like the black conservatives, right? You're talking about the conservative movement, right, which really popped off during Trump's first term, right? So there was a lot of money to be made jumping on the conservative train. I mean, look at Candace Owens, right? Her and Charlie came up together, right? Excuse me. But Trump, he was creating a populist movement that was going to be profitable to anybody who jumped on it. And that's exactly what people like Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk did. They jumped on the Trump train and they were able to see success being a part of that movement. I think it's weird, and I said this in my video last night too. I definitely think that that was a professional, organized hit. I think it was a professional, organized hit that was very much well timed. And whoever was involved with that hit on that man, like not just the shooter, but because I think it was more than a shooter involved there. But it seems very just odd to me that right at the moment that he is being asked a question about gun violence and guns, that is the moment, as he's responding to that question, that is the moment in which he is killed. And like, it's just interesting to me that of all the opportunities to do that, they wait until that particular question. It was almost, it just seems so coincidental that that would be the question that he's asked, right, and he's commentating on right before he is killed. That seems really like, it just seems like such a exaggerated coincidence to me. You think it's something conspiratorial? And don't get me wrong, I've heard Charlie Kirk debate these young people at the campuses. And here's the thing, anybody can debate them, right? Anybody can go into a college campus and debate them kids. All right. I've said it before, I'll say it again. College students aren't the sharpest tools in the shed. If you're a halfway common sense person, you will be able to debate a college student. So but again, I think the dialogue that he was facilitating, if you're a political person in America, I think it was useful dialogue. It was useful dialogue because, again, when you're talking about people who are actually engaging your next generation voters, right? You had the Democrats really were the ones that had that on lock. Like Turning Point USA, I think Charlie Kirk created something far better in terms of political college grassroots than anything that I've ever seen. Definitely got to give Charlie Kirk his flowers when it comes to political grassroots and really activating college students, and to get them activated on a single position, right? Getting them away from that liberal mindset, right? Most college students are liberal, but just going onto those campuses and really getting those kids early to say, hey, you have a choice. You have a choice. This is our ideological position. This is theirs. You have a choice. But we think that we should expose you to ours. And that's what the conservatives and Republicans have been doing. And they've been able to convince a lot of people to come on over to their side. I mean, look at Donald Trump. Donald Trump was able to get a lot of people to vote for him that would not normally have voted for a Republican president. There's a lot of people who voted for Trump who voted Republican for the first time in their lives, right? So you got to give Charlie Kirk his flowers, because Trump he would not have won. I don't think Trump would have won if he did not have Charlie Kirk mobilizing those younger voters to get out and actually vote. I mean, he was their Democratic Party grassroots. Democrats they spend a lot of money on their grassroots. The conservatives didn't really have a powerful grassroots. So Charlie Kirk was really their wonder boy on the grassroots side. I mean, they tried to get Candace Owens with that Brexit thing, but black people didn't Brexit. They did not Brexit, right? Anyways, it would have nice to see him debate at an HBCU. I agree. I agree. But again, you go where you know you're gonna win. Okay? You just go where you know you're gonna win. I don't know. I don't think he was necessarily downplaying, just saying facts. Gun violence is a major problem within gangs. I mean, gun violence is a major issue within gangs. This is true. But where are these gangs getting these guns from? I mean, we should really talk about that too. I mean, have you ever pondered how a 14-year-old can afford a Glock 19 with a drum kit, but he can't afford food? Anybody ever think about that? How are these kids getting military style weapons? How are they even able to afford it? How are they getting access to these things? And there's been several stories of people saying how the government, the feds, were dropping crates of these guns off in inner cities so that these black men can kill themselves. And then you got to raise the killers, right? So you give them little games like Call of Duty and shit, and then you kind of convince these kids through some rap songs that, hey, instead of playing Call of Duty on your PlayStation or Xbox, you should actually go out in the streets and play Call of Duties with your fellow black kids. That would be really fun. And we'll even promote some music to get you juiced up doing it. And that's what they did. And so, and I don't disagree with Charlie, that, gang violence definitely contributes um, to a lot of the gun violence. But again, it's just kind of crazy timing that was the question. That particular question is what really was like the signal to take Charlie out the game. It's almost like that question was a signal for the marksman. Like, okay, they asking the gun question. Okay, great, take him out. That might have been more organized than we think. I don't even think this is a single lone wolf person that took Charlie Kirk out the game. I think that Charlie, I think that this was an organized hit. I think that this was definitely an organized hit. Criminals are gonna break the law. You really think restrictions is gonna change it for people that don't care about the laws? I mean, yeah, I guess. Also, let's not forget two Democrat lawmakers were assassinated earlier this year by a conservative with a hit list, but no one called for civil war and retaliation like many conservative social media. The conservatives are definitely crying for war, but what I want to know is who the hell are you going to war with right now? I mean, my whole thing is they don't even know really definitively who or whom killed the man. Who you going to war with? You going to war for over Charlie Kirk? Who are you going to war with? A lone shooter? We don't even, and even if this lone shooter had liberal positions, I mean, I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, how do you know the liberals sent him? How do you know that this was something that the Democrats did? How do you know that these shooters aren't pretending like they're Democrats when really they're pawns on the conservative side to get you guys juiced up to want to feel like you want to go crazy and go to war? Because my whole thing is, who are you going to war with? Are you saying that this is civil war? You know what I mean? I mean, I've been hearing these conservatives say this is war. They're going to war with us. They're going to war. They're going who? So this is a liberals versus conservatives war. Thank God I am not that I am politically neutral. If them folks are going to war with each other, right? It's like demons versus demons all the way. You said opinion is the root of politics. He also wasn't a politician, he was a commentator. Exactly. Exactly. That's the whole thing with it. It's like Charlie Kirk, his commentary could possibly impact policy, but he wasn't a policymaker. But what made Charlie Kirk way more threatening than your elected officials is the fact that he was more popular than them. He was more popular, he had more influence over them. And he had tapped into, again, those young voter demographics. Mind you, Charlie Kirk goes into a college, you know, let's just say 2 years ago, right? That freshman is likely, a voter now, right? How old is your average freshman? Like 17, 18, right? In college? So 17, 18, 18, 19 is, I mean, these are voting age people. And he had an influence over them, a huge influence. That was the biggest threat for Charlie Kirk. He had influence. And a lot of people don't realize the power of being an influencer, especially on the political side. They were, I mean, they were paying bloggers. Kamala Harris was paying bloggers. A lot of these political people, they pay the bloggers because these are the influencers in the masses. Even when you look at Kamala Harris's team after they were analyzing their loss, right? They admitted that they did not tap into the right demographic of influencers, right? There is power in being an influencer, especially if you can influence the masses. This is why these social platforms are really, just you can pay to be an influencer, but you're paying for that algorithm. You're paying for the algorithm. This is why so many social platforms suppress different users, right? You can have the best content, right? And you can have influential content. But if they feel like you could possibly be an influencer, yeah, the cyber demons, they will stop you. This is where it takes some influencers years and years and years to get their recognition, right? And then you get some lame where they just blow up overnight because they want the demographics to look at the lame, right? They don't want the demographics looking at the person that could probably say something reasonable to get them to maybe thinking about something a little bit deeper. You see what I'm saying? So these algorithms, these social platforms, they are not really cut for rational thought. They're not cut for rational thinkers, people who can be objectives. They're cut for the sensationalists, the people who can just get a whole bunch of idiot people to believe something. And that's the power of being an influencer. And it's a cash cow these days if you do it right. I mean, I don't want to be an influencer, right? But I'm telling you, it's a cash cow if you do it right. But you got to have a higher sense of commitment, if you will. Tell me what I said. Oh, hang on. Let me go back here. What you talking about, Ghetto Planet? My bad. Let's see. Charlie Kirk built foundations for family values. No, he didn't. Those foundations were already there. You said, what about the person who killed the Minnesota lawmaker? You know, again, I believe that you can use freedom of speech, but I definitely think that people need to be. It's all about time, place, and manner. I totally believe and I live by the code of time, place, and manner. And sometimes you can speak truth from a very malicious intent, right? Some people, they can speak facts, right? But they're not speaking facts, and how can I say this? You know how they say it, it's not what you say, it's how you say it, and sometimes it's even in the manner in which you say it. So I mean, if somebody can speak a truth, right? But I think that they can also speak that truth, you know rooted in some level of superiority, right? So if somebody says, well, black black people have, black Americans um have broken homes, right? They have broken homes um in America, and this is why we see the high crime rates, is because among black people, is because we have a lot of broken homes. That is a truth, right? That has a lot of truth and validity in it, right? But if you're saying that to narrate why white superiority in that regard is so much better, right? Then now your the truth that you're speaking has some level of fallacy to it because of the context in which you're speaking it. You know what I mean? It's like saying that, uh, there's so many different examples. Hopefully, y'all follow what I'm trying to say here. I can. There's the truth and nothing but the truth. but there's a context in which you can speak the truth that, creates some level of fallacy to the truth that you're speaking, because you're speaking in it in a context that's rooted in something that is not based in truth, but more of feelings and opinions, right? So when they say all black people are DEIs, you know what I mean? Or, I think Charlie Kirk made a comment that if he saw a black pilot, he would feel some level of concern because he wouldn't know if that person was a DEI hire or if they were actually there on merit. And, that's, I mean, first of all, whether anybody's black or white, I think everybody can agree that DEI mostly benefited white women. It did not benefit black people that much. But I think, when you really analyze that statement, though, I mean, the truth in the statement comes from you have the liberal establishment that has exploited DEI, and they literally made it their mission to hire some of the most unqualified black people. And when I say unqualified, I'm talking etiquette wise. I don't care what school they went to. um, a lot of them lacked a lot of real common sense, real personal convictions outside of some bandwagon of ignorance. And you look at a lot of the Democrats that they promote and they prop, and these are to me not the best representations of black people. Like when I think about blacks in the political space and those who actually uphold some idea of black grace, I got to give it to more of the black conservatives. And I'm not talking about your Candace Owens or your Buck Dansons like Brandon Tatum's or none of those people. I'm talking about like your Condoleezza Rice's, right? Condoleezza Rice to me is an example of a black. When I was younger, I saw her and I'm like, I want to kind of be like her. She was very polished. She was very just, she had a lot of grace, and you know, yeah, she was very smart. She's a very smart woman, and she's to this day still somebody that I think is. I don't agree with her political positions, obviously, but I think as a person, though, I think that she emulates to me my idea of a graceful, black woman. You know what I mean? And I mean, and that's just to say, yeah, Ben Carson is another one. These are very intelligent black people. Um, and I think that they're black people that young black people, would want to emulate, and, devoid of, you know, um, political positions. And even with Ben Carson, it kind of sucks because they would literally take Ben Carson's flowers away from him because of his political choices. Um, and, you would think that he is a living beacon, a living example for a lot of young black men to emulate and follow, just like Lonnie George Johnson, the propulsion engineer brother, who he has a patent on a super soaker. And kids of all races played with the super soaker. I mean, if you're an American kid, you play with the super soaker. And a lot of times these kids, I'm pretty sure Charlie Kirk played with a super soaker, probably got his kids some super soakers. And a black American man has a patent on a super soaker, right? And there's a whole awesome story behind the super soaker, right? And it's Lonnie George Johnson, so I think there's a lot of black people that, we can emulate that, present themselves gracefully, and who are qualified, well qualified, in what they do. And I think the Democrats specialize in literally hiring, like it was like Make a Wish hiring. It was like literally Make a Wish Foundation. They were doing that with the trans people, the black people, and so when people are like, are you qualified to do this job? You can't really be offended. Like I can't even be offended when you have people who are promoting hiring people just because of their color, just because they got to meet a color quota. You know, I can't necessarily be offended when somebody is looking at their doctor or their lawyer, knowing that these are the practices and having those types of questions. You know what I mean? And that's not to say that, obviously, I don't believe that black doctors and lawyers and pilots and all that stuff are DEI hires. A lot of times these are specialty things. You can't just get handpicked for certain things, right? I think the private sector operates a lot differently than the public sector. You could DEI hire, pick, your marketing director all day. You can't DEI hire, a doctor, you know. And even if you try to DEI pick a lawyer, you'll lose enough cases and realize it's not the one. It's not the one. But anyways, you said I wish I could pick stocks like Shaq. Shoo, forget Shaq. I'm trying to pick stocks like Nancy Pelosi. I mean, shoo. I'm trying to be like Wall Street Nancy when I get older. Okay, I don't know what Shaq got going on in his portfolio, but I care about Nancy Pelosi's portfolio at all times. I really do. But anyways, thank you. Hey, Fred, what's up, Fred Hinkle? Seeing Ghetto Planet and Fred Henkel. This just it makes me feel like my old live streaming days. What's going on, Fred? Thank you. It's one of my I've had this for years. It's one of my favorite shirts. It's actually like one of my bum shirts now. But I specialize in being a bum. What's going on, Tyrone? I see you. I see you. But let me know what you guys think. Um and again, I'm going to say this cuz I see a lot of black people getting on other black people about scolding them about celebrating the Charlie Kirk's assassination, right? They're calling them Sambos, they're calling them this, they're calling them that, and like I said, me personally, I don't believe in getting bullied into groupthink. You're not going to bully me into believing that it is okay to celebrate the death of another person. I don't care what their political positions are. Charlie Kirk did not go around killing folks. He wasn't a murderer, from what I understood. He wasn't a pedophile. Okay? He was a guy that had political, social positions that may be contrary to my own. Maybe they were insulting to my people, right? But at the end of the day, he had the right to have them. He had the right to have them. This is America. You don't have to like anybody in this nation if you don't want to. You can think you're better than people in this nation if you wanted to. Okay? Charlie Kirk didn't have to like not one black person, but we see that Candace Owens was one of his best friends, and he had a couple of other black people that were really good friends of his. So apparently he liked some of them. But that is just to say, I'm not about to celebrate the man's passing. I'm not about to celebrate the man's passing. I believe that vengeance belongs to the Lord. And I don't believe that other imperfect humans should be taking the lives of other imperfect humans. And even if it has historically happened, right? If you're a person running around saying that you are a believer, that you have faith, you know, then you understand that vengeance belongs to your God. And the person that did that to that man, they're no evil, they're no better than Charlie Kirk. If you think that Charlie Kirk was absolutely evil, are you saying that the person that did that to him was not? Like, come on now. People are weird. People are so weird. Have you looked into a content creator named Jeff St. James? I think he's pretty good. He did a video on Charlie with a nuanced perspective. I'm gonna check out Jeff St. James. I mean, I think that, again, I think there are a lot of people in this nation who have mastered the art of agreeing to disagree, walking away from disagreements with grace, and even being able to master the art of giving your opponent dignity. You know, even when they can't give you dignity, right? That you can give them dignity, right? Some people have mastered that. We don't live in a nation where people are even interested in that, right? But there's a lot of people who have mastered the art of giving their opponents dignity. I didn't know Charlie Kirk personally, so I mean, he wasn't my adversary. I don't have a political position. I don't have a political dog in any fight, right? So, I mean, to me, I'm not celebrating anybody's death. I mean, I'll let God handle all of these folks and leave it alone. But, anyways, you guys, let me get off of this live stream. Show some love to Ghetto Planet, my moderator. I miss you, my friend, Fred Henkel. Always good to see you. Show some love to Fred because we love to see him. And then everyone else who chimed in, Jack Pack, see you. You said you wish you could pick stocks like Shaq. I would follow Nancy Pelosi, my friend. Follow her. Um, I don't know who's talking mean to my moderator. Who is this talking saying his death was ironic? Is downplaying. It wasn't ironic. It was completely unjustified murder of an innocent man for his opinions. People keep saying that Charlie Kirk died for his opinions. I'm not believing that. I'm really not believing that. I really don't feel like Charlie Kirk died because of his opinions. He's had these opinions. People like him have had these opinions for decades. Okay? Rush Limbaugh, Bill O'Reilly, right? They've had similar ideas, talking points as Charlie Kirk. You know what I mean? But the difference between Rush Limbaugh, Bill O'Reilly, and Charlie Kirk was influence. Okay? Rush Limbaugh, Bill O'Reilly, they had their set demographics of people, but it wasn't young college people. I mean, people can, obviously we are all running on assumption here. I personally believe that Charlie Kirk died because he was a threat. He had too much influence. Remember that scene in Malcolm X where they were outside of the police station, right? And the crowd was just going crazy, and Malcolm X, he put up his hands, and then everybody just got quiet, and then he hand gestured, and then they were like in military formation, and then they just like marched away, and then the white police chief was like, that's too much power for one man to have, right? That's too much power. Malcolm X was a threat. It wasn't because of what he said and what he believed so much. It was the power of his influence. When you can influence the masses, when you get to a point in your content creation, when you are influencing millions of people with your content across platforms, that is a lot of power. And I think the thing is, on the conservative side, Charlie Kirk probably would have been safe. He probably would have been safe. But I think Charlie Kirk might have been speaking on some things recently, that, people in his own party, probably did not want him speaking on. You know, Epstein, Israel, right? Over the years, a lot of people on the conservative side, the Republican, this new class of conservatives, right? Like, what's the guy that Candace Owens is always? Dave, Dave, um, gosh, Dave something. He's the sort of libertarian Jew guy or whatever. A lot of your conservatives, right, especially those who were on that first Trump wave, right? Somewhere between somewhere, the conservative movement, the Republican movement, is moving a lot of their sort of, like, I want to say 40 ish, 30 to 40 ish kind of people. That's moving them closer to the center, right? So you still have your extreme right, but now you have a lot more people like your Candace Owens and some of these other people who originally came up with Trump, as opposed to them being diehard right wingers. These people are slowly moving towards the center, right? Which is not good for, whatever extremist aspect of that right wing population, right? Because they are the influencer, they are the voices, they are the people. So, I think that Charlie Kirk probably changed his ideals a bit, as people do as they get older. And I think that he started speaking on things with probably a little bit more confidence, because he's like, well, my platform's bigger. Who cares? I'm indispensable. And actually, you're not, buddy. You're not. If you're not on code with some of these little Kabbalist type of people, they're their whole things, they'll take you out the game. You're talking about Israel, you're talking about Epstein, right? And you're committing content to those things, right? That's where you get into the danger zone. And I think that Charlie Kirk, like I said, this is not about right versus left, in my opinion. These are not about his extreme right views. That's part of it, but the bigger part is how big Charlie Kirk got, the influence that he had. And they needed to get rid of that influence. This is a huge blow to the conservative movement, because who do they have to really replace Charlie Kirk? I mean, Candace Owens would be a better, replacement for Turning Point USA, because she kind of grew up with that organization. She would be more of a suitable, better, a stronger, I would say, voice for Turning Point USA as a replacement of Charlie. But I don't see any other voices that they have that really have the same type of charisma as Charlie, that would be even likable like that outside of your Candace Owens. So we will see what happens with Turning Point USA, because I don't really see, I mean, I think they probably already turned to the point that they're going to be at. And it'll be interesting to see how that legacy kind of stays alive, because who going to have time to do it? Don Jr.? No. Candace Owens makes more sense. I mean, it would make sense if they tapped her in. She ain't got no damn job. She's an independent. And that'll get her away from talking about Brigitte Macron and her balls or possible balls, according to Candace, allegedly. Um, but anyways, you guys, I'm getting tired. Happy Friday Eve to you guys. I'm not gonna talk about Charlie Kirk no more. Dave Smith, thank you, Ghetto Planet. Dave Smith, yeah, you got these new class conservatives coming up, and they're going a little bit more center. And I feel like Charlie Kirk was doing that too. Matter of fact, Candace Owens alluded to at the very end of her remembrance of Charlie Kirk, she was saying that Charlie, towards the, right before he died, that Charlie might have been dealing with a lot of pressure from people who were challenging his values, right? And whatever that means, maybe she'll go a little bit more in detail about that a little bit later. But Candace, according to her, seemed to have felt like Charlie was not comfortable towards the end. And the one thing that I wanted, that I looked at the video. I didn't look at the video of him being shot, but those moments before he was shot, where he was throwing the hats in the crowd. And what I was trying to see is, did he look different? Because I've seen Charlie Kirk, I've watched Turning Point events, I've seen him in action and in motion. So I wanted to see, did he display any type of feelings that this was going to be my last day of alive? You know how they say, like, right before something, traumatic happened or something, you start to kind of feel there's kind of like a weird buildup in the day. Things are kind of weird and odd. And, you just things don't sit right with you that day. But I'm looking at this video and he looked like he had no clue. Dude looked like he had no clue that that was going to go down for him. Like it didn't even seem like he wasn't nervous or anything. So I'm wondering, I mean, how some people, they feel like somebody might be after them, right? They'll start being a little bit more paranoid. I'm wondering, did he have some kind of feelings? Was he getting any type of, special threats before this? Or did somebody just know he was going to be there and just set it up? And again, I'm sorry. It's very suspect to me that right when they asked him that question about gun violence, it's almost as if somebody wanted to create a sweet scenario to be able to ask him that question, take him out the game, and then recycle sound bites that they found of him talking about there, because there's sound bites of Charlie Kirk, and I'm paraphrasing, saying something along the lines of, it's necessary to have casualties of gun violence so that we can maintain our Second Amendment rights. And a lot of he was probably saying that coming from a place of, I feel like I'm safe and secure, I'm rich, I'm never, the chances of me being a victim of gun violence is very slim. And look what took him out the game. And then you have people like Tariq Nasheed and some other black commentators. They're like, he spent a whole lot of time denigrating black men, talking about how we're violent and how we're threatening. And at the end of the day, this man did not lose his life by a black man. He lost his life by his own. You think he was sacrificed? Somebody, I listen to the buzzwords, what people say. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting is that some conservatives said, they use the word sacrifice. Like he was sacrificed. But my thing is, sacrifice for what? Like he was an integral part of the Trump administration. So why would they sacrifice him? And then even with the Democrats, the only thing about the Democrats, it wouldn't be a sacrifice. It'd be a straight up hit if it was really the Democrats, because again, he usurps their whole plans. I mean, Trump won because Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA. Trump got his additional momentum after that first term because of Turning Point USA. Matter of fact, I can't even, if somebody said, name a grassroots college organization on the Democratic side, I would not be able to tell you. But if somebody said, name a grassroots college focused organization on the Republican side, it's going to be Turning Point USA. So this young man, I mean, again, whatever, however you want to digest his rhetoric, right? He definitely was a threat to the Democrats. His organization was a threat to the Democrats because he was doing what the Republicans should have been doing decades ago. Matter of fact, the reason why the Democrats were able to flex on the Republicans for so damn long is because they did not have boots on the ground. And Charlie Kirk and his organization was basically that boots on the ground, and they leveled it up with all the podcasting. So you actually saw boots on the ground that actually had an identifiable face. So, Democrats, if you're getting ideas of the rise of Charlie Kirk and raising your own, because we know y'all like to copy each other, right? Got to be a podcaster with a grassroots feel that, can really connect people like Charlie did. He was a threat to threat that they acted on. Absolutely. You think about it, the political cycle is not that far. These people are scheming on how they're going to win the next time. And like I said in my other video, they are analyzing all the ways that Trump won this second time, all the variables, and they're trying to address those variables, right? But the biggest variable that they have to really address, coming into the next political cycle is Turning Point USA. How are we going to compete with a Turning Point USA if you got a guy like Charlie Kirk on campus making the college students look irrational to the point where they're like, well, maybe I am dumb. Maybe I should vote conservative. You know? Think about how many people Charlie Kirk was able to convert, how many college students he was able to convert just being boots on the ground. So, big L, big loss for the conservative movement. And again, we will see how, what happens with Turning Point USA. I don't know how it survives after Charlie Kirk. The sucky thing is when you have a singular person that is the face of the organization, it is hard for that organization to live on. They can find another white guy all they want to. They can find a white chick all they want to, but it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same. Charlie Kirk was the face of Turning Point USA. So I would be interested to see if they even still exist after this. But anyways, you guys, you said Rush and Bill also belong to a certain group. That's another story. I'm telling you, yeah. Oh yeah. You know what? I thought about that too, Ghetto Planet. I'm like, people like I was Charlie Kirk was on all of the major news networks. I don't remember, and maybe I just maybe didn't catch it at the right time. I didn't see anything about 9/11. You're right. They told us never forget, except for when a social and political commentator gets executed. Then we can totally forget about 9/11. I mean, I literally, I was so distracted with the Charlie Kirk stuff. I totally forgot this is 9/11. That's terrible. Terrible. Anyways, you guys have a wonderful evening. Good night. Have Ghetto Planet. Thanks so much for being moderator. Jack Pack 3. See you. And I will possibly do another live stream this weekend. Maybe Saturday if anything new comes up. They kept saying that the shooter was trans. I'm not sure if that was just some conservative hoax or narrative. Um, I'm actually kind of praying that the shooter is not a transgender. Because, I mean, yeah, we've been getting a lot of mass shooters who are transgenders, and it's really not making those people look good at all. That used to be a mental health, issue back in the day. Then they normalized it into society. But the more these people are out here shooting folks, running up into schools, and doing all that weird shit, the more we're going to have to start opening the mental asylums back up. We need to open up the mental institutions back up and get some of these people in there. But anyways, you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.